Hey, what's going on, Ringsiders? This is your host, Boxing's Objective Observer, and welcome back to Ringside Stories. Or if you're new, we make content regarding boxing through mini documentaries, backstories, takeaways, and much more. So if you enjoy that type of content, feel free to subscribe, thumbs up, and hit that notification bell for the latest here on Ringside Stories. Thanks so much for your support in advance, and welcome to the channel. Josh Taylor, the undisputed world champion at 140, had a shaky performance to say the least against his mandatory challenger, Jack Catterall.
Right, and he did everything he could to try and win it. For me, it was not his night. Jack Catterall should be the undisputed, unified, super lightweight champion, and he should be celebrating tonight, not heartbroken backstage. I don't understand it.
There's a lot to discuss, so let's break it down with 5 takeaways from Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall. Let's get into it. Number 1, terrible officiating, not a robbery.
You're talking about a kid who's worked all his life to wait for that moment, who stepped aside, who's waited 3 years for his opportunity. He stepped aside, done the right thing for boxing, stepped aside to allow a unified champion on the promise that he would get the opportunity. He gets the opportunity, he performs like that and beats the champion in his own backyard and gets absolutely robbed.
It's a horrible game, but the wrong man got his hand raised.
I'm sure if Josh Taylor's at home when he watches this, he'll think, you know what, I had a bit of a luck tonight, and I won a fight I shouldn't have won. I feel so much for Catterall's team and Jamie Moore, because they put a lot of work and effort into this. That won't happen again, because Taylor will probably move up.
I'm actually embarrassed tonight because I'm promoting this event, and that's heartbreaking for Jack, and I'm embarrassed.
The moment you think you work all your life, you're going to get crowned a world champion after a performance like that, and it's snatched away from you. It's disgusting. I don't even know what to say. You've asked Jack to come down here, as if Jack can come and speak. He's absolutely heartbroken.
Now, I get it. Boxing is a sport where fans get emotionally involved. Some people bet. And in this fight, I think Jack Catterall was a minus 1,300 or something. So when you bet on Jack Catterall, who clearly outboxed Josh Taylor in spots, it's easy to condemn the results. In my opinion, Jack Catterall won this fight, not by much, which makes it a close fight, not a robbery. Number 2, Catterall's boxing, bad aesthetic. Again, Jack Catterall in spots outboxed Josh Taylor, but just ask yourself objectively, did Jack Catterall impose himself? In recent memory, George Kambosos Jr. went to Teofimo Lopez's backyard and pressed the action from the get-go. Kambosos, who stylistically, just like Jack Catterall, fights off the back foot for most part, stuck it on Teofimo Lopez and showed he really wanted to win throughout the entire fight. Kambosos stamped his performance with an exclamation mark during the championship rounds. On the other hand, Jack Catterall did not press the action in this fight against Josh Taylor, especially in the last 4 rounds. Keep in mind, Jack Catterall fought negative for pretty much the entire fight, which he boxed beautifully, counterpunched Taylor, timed him beautifully, but he just fought negatively. So if you're speaking objectively, if you look at the aesthetic of the fight, the aesthetic of Jack Catterall, which Andre Ward commented about on the ESPN broadcast, Jack Catterall's body language was weak, especially in the latter stage of the fight. From rounds 9 to the final bell, Jack Catterall did not come after the champion, thus allowed Josh Taylor back into the fight, which is kind of surprising, especially considering the fact Jack Catterall knocked down Josh Taylor in round 8, Taylor who seemed to be hurt. And after his point deduction in round 9, you would suspect that Jack Catterall was going to try and even out that point deduction by making sure that he was not going to lose this fight. Because remember, if you're sitting ringside, knowing that Josh Taylor was fighting in his hometown, you should be able to understand that the judges can be swayed by that, especially considering that this was Josh Taylor's homecoming fight for the first time in years. And you know the saying in boxing, in order to win the belts, you have to beat the champion. And so you got to conclude, Jack Catterall counterpunched Josh Taylor beautifully, but he did allow Josh Taylor to come back into the fight and not close out strong. Number 3, Josh Taylor underperformed.
I just put a little bit too much pressure on myself, with being the heavy favourite, being the first time at home, put my pressure on to puts on such a good show. But overall, I scored the bigger shots, the better shots, the more meaningful shots. You know, so I know I won the fight. But it was a little bit close. But I know I won the fight.
Whether it was because of the pressure of making his first defense of his undisputed world championship, whether it was because Taylor's first fight in his hometown in years, and let's not forget Taylor did not have ideal preparation with a knee injury, being tested positive for corona, a bronchial infection, or maybe just because Jack Catterall was better than anyone, including Josh Taylor, had anticipated prior, we just didn't see the best of Josh Taylor. For most part, the fight was a chess match, and when Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall came in each other's range, things got sloppy a lot. Now officially, Josh Taylor is the undisputed world champion at 140, so let's not forget the body of work the Scotsman has put in the last 2 to 3 years. So perhaps Josh Taylor had an off night, which can happen, and Taylor did press the action in the latter rounds from round 9 all the way up to the final bell. It's just that he didn't look himself. And so Josh Taylor has to be better in future fights, especially if he's moving up to 147 next. And we don't know how good Jack Catterall is as of yet, so this is no disrespect to him. But would Josh Taylor have been in with an elite level fighter, a proven elite level fighter, Josh Taylor would have probably lost all of his belts on Saturday, February the 26th of 2022. Number 4, Ben Davison is not an elite trainer. The third fight under Ben Davison, and I'm impressed with how unimpressive Josh Taylor has looked since hooking up with Ben Davison. Now, Josh Taylor is a pound-for-pound level fighter who has been molded by another young trainer from the UK, that being Shane McGuigan. But under Shane McGuigan, Josh Taylor showed to be more promising than Josh Taylor has looked in his last 3 fights, including this fight with Jack Catterall, where Josh Taylor got hit with the same basic 1-2 combination over and over again. Now, from a physical point of view, Josh Taylor underperformed compared to his recent fights that spring to mind. However, tactically, Taylor seemed to struggle with Jack Catterall's slickness, who has been in sparring the likes of Saul Canelo Alvarez and Floyd Mayweather, who maybe he has seemed to take some of that slickness, which gave Josh Taylor some issues and unable to make the proper adjustments as the round passed by. And that is where Josh Taylor's corner comes into play.
I said there was a lot of pressure. Josh didn't want to make any mistakes. I think he was slightly too hesitant in moments in the first half of the fight. Going in moments that he probably shouldn't have went, and not going in moments that he should have went. Just finding, I think an element of his focus was elsewhere, exterior, as opposed to being focused on actually in the ring.
Ben Davison is a good trainer, has good eye. However, on the highest of levels, Ben Davison has proven that he is not your man. Astute boxing observers will conclude that this is an ongoing pattern when he was in the corner for Billy Joe Saunders, when he cornered Tyson Fury, and also now with Josh Taylor, who is a pound-for-pound level fighter and did not get better under the tutelage of Ben Davison.
That's Josh's last fight at 140, and if he moves up and him and Jack have a rematch at 147 at the minute, it'd be a non-title fight. But I think with the performance that Jack put in there as well, it's a fight worthy of a world title fight up at 147 one day.
So a definite move up for Josh in the next fight?
Yeah.
Against Jack Catterall, Taylor was getting hit consistently without putting up a decent offense, without getting into a proper rhythm of his own. Josh Taylor is a natural, intuitive fighter, which the Taran Tornado put on full display in his first successful run in the 140-pound division, together with Shane McGuigan, where he beat 2 undefeated hard-hitting world champions, Ivan Baranchyk and Regis Prograis, which resulted in Josh Taylor winning the World Boxing Super Series, becoming the unified 140-pound world champion, taking the Muhammad Ali trophy home in the process. Then against Jose Ramirez for the undisputed 140-pound world championship, Josh Taylor had his man hurt several times, knocked down his man several times, yet backed off and chose to not finish Jose Ramirez, and was close to getting robbed on the scorecards regardless of the 2 knockdowns that Taylor scored. That was indicative of Ben Davison's influence on Josh Taylor, who is a notorious defensively minded coach, which goes against Josh Taylor's nature as a fighter, which nearly cost him this fight against Jack Catterall officially, as the majority of people who watched Taylor versus Catterall believe that Josh Taylor should have lost this fight.
Didn't think he's the same Josh Taylor that was in my gym. Disappointed. I've done a lot of hard work over the years, done 5 years of fantastic work, and honestly, it frustrates me to see him boxing like that. But and I know it's not even the weight. I know it's just simply the fact that he's trying to change his style. He's a high-paced pressure fighter that's fantastic on the inside. His hands are down by his chest. He was walking at punches and getting his head jabbed off. He needs to be better than that.
Right, what's your questions on this? Up to 147 for Taylor?
No, he's going to lose his attributes going up to 147. He needs to stay at 140.
In my opinion, Josh Taylor will be better off to sack Ben Davison and re-sign his former trainer, Shane McGuigan. Number 5. Next for Josh Taylor, will there be a rematch?
We'll see how it goes. I don't think there is any need for a rematch. I think I won the fight. I won the fight with a couple of rounds. I won the fight in the second half of the fight. You know, I took over, bossed him. You know, he was doing a hell of a lot of holding and spoiling. And then I think the ref taking a point off me probably hurt me a little bit, but I still won the fight. I still won the fight.
And what's next for the Tartan Tornado? Special K, aka Kel Brook, who was in attendance and who, after beating his longtime rival Amir Khan, has options should Khan not activate his rematch clause for a potential Khan versus Brook 2 fight. Teofimo Lopez. There has been a back and forth between these two talented fighters, and a Taylor versus Lopez fight would be enticing nonetheless. And there's Terence Crawford. Most people would say that Terence Crawford at this point in time would beat Josh Taylor, probably stop him. Now, as the undisputed world champion at 140, Josh Taylor has a chance to take on Terence Crawford next as his mandatory challenger, and that's because of his status as super champion with the WBO. A similar situation we have seen played out with Alexander Usyk not too long ago, who became Anthony Joshua's Mando after winning all of the belts at cruiserweight. Now, that's all future talk. Hats off to Jack Catterall for putting on a good performance, and Josh Taylor, who showed championship level heart, and although not his best self, still showed some promise we as boxing fans hopefully will witness in the near future. These are just my observations. What are yours? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this kind of content and you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, give a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell. It helps the channel out a lot, i.e. inspire us to make more quality content for y'all. As always, thank you so much for your support, and welcome to Ringside Stories. Now, if you've done that already, you're amazing. We already know that. You are the true undisputed world champion. Till next time, Ringsiders, this is your host, Boxing's Objective Observer, with Ringside Stories. Thanks for watching, and have a legendary day.